Well, to today's debate now, should it be mandatory to opt in to organ donations? We can talk to GP Dr. Onka Sahota and blogger for The Conservative Woman, Caroline Farrow. Dr. Onka, I'll come to you first. In Wales, they have the situation where you have to actually opt out of being on the organ donor register. Everybody goes on it. Do you think that is the right way to go?
Well, certainly, first of all, I think we congratulate the Welsh Assembly for doing this. It has increased the number of people available for donation, and I think they've made 39 transplants in the last 1 year. But it's a soft opt-out in the sense that members of the family are still consulted on the matter, and it's very important that donors do share with their family what their intentions. So I think it's and I actually favour it. I think it's a brave move, it's a sensible move, and when you look at the evidence right across the world, countries which have got compulsory opt-in right, or we have to voluntarily opt out, get a great number of donors available to their...
So even if you are on that system, families could block it if they don't know, you know, if they disagree, families have the final say,
Absolutely.
do they?
The families do have final say in those matters. Data shows that people who have with the Welsh system, 90% of those families will agree to for donation, compared to 60% if you're not on it.
So, Caroline, doesn't that sound like the perfect option, really, that, you know, families do ultimately have the final say?
Well, I think nobody's disputing that transplantation is a wonderful gift. But there is an inherent danger, I think, in saying that, OK, we are all... almost our bodies are belonging to the state, you know, and our organs are to be used for transplantation. You know, it removes quite a vital element of bodily autonomy. And I think transplantation needs to be a voluntary gift. There needs to be informed consent. And when you start taking organs from people, you know, there is no presumed consent. And what becomes a gift actually becomes about taking from people, and it violates, I think, the dignity of the deceased. And the other important point is, although at the moment we're told that families are consulted and nothing is done without the family's consent, actually you could see a situation whereby, you know, a family said no, say particularly in the case of a deceased child, and then, you know, they got into a legal battle or confrontation with the authorities, which is very distressing. So although I can see that we really need to increase the number of voluntary donors, it does need to be on a voluntary basis.
But surely if you felt passionate about not donating your organs, whether it be for religious reasons or you just don't like the idea, surely if you felt that passionately about it, you would opt out, or you would make it well known that you don't want that to happen to you?
Well, I think people don't actually have enough information. I mean, one of the issues that's surrounding this is that when transplantation takes place, it's when there's clinical brain death. So you've still got, you know, a beating heart, and patients have to be...
All your organs are very healthy.
Yeah, and your patients have to be anaesthetised. And I think it's interesting, I was talking about this off-air to someone, and they weren't even aware of that. And there is, I think we have to look out to protect patients' interests. And there is a concern that there could potentially be a sort of rush to retrieve organs, because we have seen, and they are admittedly rare, but we have seen cases where people were being prepped for organ retrieval and then woke up. And I think it could also undermine a confidence in the medical profession if people think...
Well, let me just come back on that. Look, first of all, I think we people don't think about death so early on. And I think if you...
Nobody wants to think about it.
No one thinks about it, and we don't think about the issues about it. So I think if you're already up to date, it forces you to think about this issue, and you make a conscious decision to come out of it. The second thing is, it's a myth, right, that the doctors will maybe be rushing in to take your organs out. The doctors who are looking after you have one responsibility, is to extend your life. They're not concerned about taking the organs away. So they will...
But there is a time concern, isn't there? Because you do hear these stories of parents, for instance, you use the example of a child, parents who are in the stages of perhaps losing their child, who are then having to talk to a doctor about the possibility of organ transplants for somebody who desperately needs them. So there is a time factor that doctors are under.
And I think having to make that decision or having that discussion at the moment of death is very, very difficult.
Yeah.
When you've already considered the issues beforehand, if you're already opted in, you are forced to have that consideration. Do I want to opt out, and have a very reflective view on the matter. And of course, I agree with you that at a time of death, it's very difficult for relatives. But if they've had a clear indication from their loved one that that's what they wanted, it makes life easier for the families, right? Okay, and not having to make the choices. And I think I also want to reassure anyone who is on the donor register, is that the doctors will be even more careful to make sure you have extra checks to make sure that you are truly dead before they go through that route. So the doctor looking after you only have one role, they're looking after you. They're not really concerned about harvesting unless they're entirely sure that you passed away.
Do you think complacency is a big problem, that most people, or certainly a lot of people, just don't think about it, don't want to think about it, so therefore don't make the effort to research it?
Well, that's right, and I would actually agree with you that we need to, all of us, talk about death more, you know, consider, you know, issues surrounding, you know, the end of life, you know, the sort of care we want and what we want to happen to us after we die. That's extremely important, but it's very difficult in the case of under 18s, for example, who can't consent, and very often, you know, parents do not want to consider what to do.
It's not a conversation you'd have with anyone under the age of 18, is it?
With their child, and I think they're although, you know, I'm not suggesting for one moment that doctors are organ snatchers or body snatchers, but I think it could well undermine a trust in the medical profession, and there could be that perception, because it's interesting, you look back 100 years ago when deceased people, you know, cadavers were in very short supply, and we had, you saw grave robbing and this kind of atrocity. And, you know, the law was passed to try and remove the stigma. You know, people were encouraged to try and think about, you know, donating their bodies, because when the state took the bodies, they took the bodies of criminals, you know, for dissection. That really undermined trust, and there was a stigma. So I think we need to really work on the voluntary aspect.
Okay, well, I think what we've learned today, we have run out of time, but it's sparked a discussion. And hopefully, it will encourage people at home to have these conversations.
Just one single plea is that, of course, legislation is one thing. Public education is very important in both systems, and particularly I want to have a message to the BME community, right, who are needing more transplantation in this country, but are less on the donor register. So I think we need to get the message out to all members of the community to make this thing.
Okay, Dr. Onka Sahota and Caroline Farrow, thank you for talking to us about that this morning.